In this episode of Stackability AI, we sit down with Dan Chuparkoff, CEO and founder of Reinvention Labs. Dan is an innovative team transformer. He's worked with some of the biggest names in the business, including Google, McKinsey, and Atlassian. We'll hit the ground running, talking to Dan about how he likes to use AI to help bridge the ever-increasing lines of communication in business. There are sure to be some hot topics in this episode. I'm your host, Austin Cornelio, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mike Taylor. Let's jump into today's show. All right. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show. Happy to have you be part of another AI Founders episode on Stackability AI.
Hey, Austin, Mike, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. It's going to be awesome.
Let's jump right in. We usually like to start off with what I like to refer to as like a little AI icebreaker, get the conversation going. Tell me about a time where you had a light bulb moment or a eureka moment or something along your journey in AI where your mind was just like blown, or you delivered like tremendous value to someone that you're working with, and we'll get into your whole journey here after this. But I'm curious if you've had one of those.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the first most clear pivot points for me when I really saw that, like, wow, this is going to change the way we work dramatically, was I was working at Google. I formerly was a product leader at Google. I just left in September of 2023. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But when I was at Google, we were first starting to use AI tools inside of our own products before they were released. And one of the first things we got to use was note taking built into Meet or Hangouts or whatever you call the Google video thing. And it was instantly helpful. And what I mean by that is we used to have meetings, we'd have an all hands meeting with, our VP and all of their reports, maybe 400 or 500 of us on a call, have this meeting like every 6 weeks or so. It's like 90 minutes, cover strategy, plans, tactics, projects. And it's mostly the kind of meeting where 499 of us are listening and like 1 or 2 or 3 people is talking. And what we started to realize is, first we started recording that and we could just watch the video later. So if we had a conflict or we couldn't make it or we were sick that day, we could watch the video later. But watching the video later was still like a 90-minute endeavor. But then all of a sudden we had Meet summaries. And you could just scan the 90-minute notes and see what was talked about. And if there was one part of the 90-minute meeting that was interesting, you could sort of double click on that and just watch that part of the video or just listen to that audio while you were on the train or riding a bike. And that was the moment where I realized, like, if you're not talking in a meeting anymore, you're not going to have to go. And there's a lot of meeting spectators in the world. Every day in the US alone, there's 100 million hours of meetings every single day. And most of that is people just listening to the 2 or 3 main people talk. And AI is going to dramatically change that. It's going to give us huge percentages of our week back. And that's going to be amazingly powerful.
I think I had a similar experience as well. It's funny that you two had that same kind of thing happen. I was having a call with my now to be financial advisor, and I was using Read AI, and it popped up and he's like, what is this thing? And I'm like, well, I use this Read AI that is a Zoom plugin, and basically it does all my note taking for me and this and things. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then like a day or two went on and he's like, hey man, that Read AI transcript, that thing blew my mind, because it sent him like a copy of the conversation, and he had no idea like any of this was even possible. So he was immediately able to see the value in that, and just that little experience there allowed me to have like further conversations with him about AI, and I was able to help him with some consulting arrangements and such. So it's just like those like moments that are so like mind blowing, and to guys like us, it's kind of like, it's exciting, but it's like we've seen some things in our time, and it's not like the most exciting thing by any means, but very cool. So I think this is a good segue, Dan, into Reinvention Labs. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how you got started? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's some parallels between the Google story you just shared with like the meetings and everything to where you are at right now.
Yeah, so I'll start at the end of the story first. Last September, I quit my job at Google to help teams figure out how to navigate this new AI transition. It's going to be hard. It's going to impact tech people and non-tech people and managers and non-managers and people in every field. And so I realized that I have an opportunity to help people through that transition. I'm kind of good at that. And the reason I know I'm kind of good at that is backing all the way up to the beginning of my career. I started work in 1992. I was a computer programmer. I was working on a small application for some company that I worked at. And it was mainframe applications when I first started. I was doing that for about a year and a half. And then we got this shipment of PCs. We all just uncrated a bunch of PCs and put them on everyone's desk, and no one had any idea what to do with them. But I was kind of tech forward. I had a PC at home for a while. And so I helped our team figure out what we could do with PCs, what software we needed, what we could do with that software. And I helped us use PCs to change the way we worked. And then that happened again 5 years later. We got the internet, and now we could share information over oceans, and that changed the way we worked again. 5 years more went by. Now BlackBerry puts mobile phones in our pockets. Now we could send email and be in meetings at the same time. Changed the way we worked again, right? And every 5 years that kept happening. We got cloud 5 years later, and data science, 5 years after that, and remote work came with 2020 and COVID. And now we have this AI transition. Every 5 years, there's something big that changes the way we work. And so I've paid attention to those changes, and I've created a process that helps teams make it through a big change like that. So that's what I do now.
It's very smart. I love it that you've been part of many cycles, basically from day one, and you know I don't know if there's a lot of people that really have experienced that, right? Because you have all different kinds of walks of life, different ages, etc., working within tech. And the tech industry really isn't that old, but when you come across somebody that has been part of it from the beginning and spotted these cycles, you're uniquely primed to be able to identify the patterns. And as engineers and tech workers, like we're already kind of natively primed to understand patterns and everything. So yeah.
Adapt. I think adaptation is the big key to that. And I was enjoying the stroll down memory lane because I was thinking back to when I first saw Google, and I was like, what's a Google? And then you step on it and it's like just a line, and I'm like, what do we do here? And at the time I think we were using Yahoo or Internet Explorer for searching things, and it was just kind of beginning, and I was like putting together my first PC, and it was like for a day and a half, it was like the leading edge computer that you could possibly build, and just thinking about that, all those changes that had happened and being able to adapt to those changes is really the superpower of the tech industry. That's something that we've all experienced and it's been forced upon us as much as we've embraced it. It hasn't come, because we were looking for it necessarily.
That's correct.
So Reinvention Labs started from your ability to it's basically an extension of where you've been over the last your entire career, right? And along comes AI, and now there is a whole other set of challenges and things to educate teams on, and undergo digital transformation, etc. So the idea originated essentially from from your experience in the past. So, what exact problems are you trying to solve with Reinvention Lab? So, I understand that it's mostly by way of speaking engagements.
That's correct. Yeah. So when most big corporations, even small corporations, it's pretty normal for a company to have some sort of annual strategy meeting, some sort of kickoff meeting where they all get together. They talk about the how last year went, how the new year could go. They create plans. They get together. There's awards, pizza, cake, whatever. Um, that is a pretty normal thing for corporations to do. And at an event like that, it's pretty normal for them to bring in an outsider to share some perspectives. That's mostly what I do. I spend, my week flying from one city to another. It's mostly back and forth from Orlando to Las Vegas. But I go to those cities and I join, an insurance company or an association for architects or Steelcase Furniture or, just random companies. And I just help them figure out what AI is going to do to their teams and the way they work.
Got it. So, are you finding that they're asking specific questions? So, one of the things that I'm really starting to realize about the whole AI movement is people don't know where to start, right? And you're probably dealing with bigger companies, right? I'm assuming that these are enterprise companies, and their challenge is completely different than the SMB, where these guys would benefit just really by, in some cases, just having like a decently intelligent chatbot on their website, right? So how do you navigate that whole thing? Are you finding that you can pretty much, like, I hate to say pre-can, but are you noticing that a certain size clientele or enterprise are essentially trying to solve the same problems?
I think the thing that I'm sort of gravitating to the most is, going back to the light bulb moment that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast here, where I noticed that AI was going to dramatically change how we consume meetings. I also realize, in addition to meetings, we spend a lot of time sending email back and forth to each other, reading that email, responding to it, trying to find the old one that we got 3 weeks ago, and also chat. Many of us are in Slack or Teams now, and so there's this constant stream of chat messages, and we're racing to keep up. Most of our week is spent just in information management juggling, and because the new kind of AI that's blowing up in the world right now is based on language models, it's really, really great at managing information across our teams. And so that's my focus. And so if I'm talking to, I'm about to go to a meeting where it's just 40 leaders from plumbing and HVAC organizations, right? Those are pretty small businesses, right? But they have the same information drowning problems that a 5,000 person, corporate organization has. Everyone has too much email. They're drowning in information. There's too much data. They can't make sense of it. And so I help teams figure out how to find those things. And once you make that better, then there's other stuff we can do. But that's, I think, the first problem that almost everyone has.
I think it comes down to the condition of the company's data that you're going to be using, right? Most of the small, medium-sized businesses don't have reliable data. They don't have a reliable database of information, a knowledge base, or anything like that. So when you go into these larger organizations, you could say, okay, I just watched a video earlier today about HubSpot, and they have a robust knowledge base. They have a robust product. They have, testimonials, and they have all of these different things. And what they're trying to solve is completely different than most of the people that, we're coming across in our day-to-day lives, and people who are interested in what we can do for their businesses, because they don't even have the basics of, they need basic business structure before they could add AI to it. So some of these companies don't have a very good CRM, or they don't have a very good knowledge base, and everybody's been there for a while, or 20 years or 30 years, and all this information is baked into their brains, and they haven't let it out yet. So it's definitely a different conversation there than it is when you're talking to the larger, the HubSpots or the Googles of the world, right? Yeah, so it's all about that key database, or key information that they're going to need to employ a chat bot or something like that.
Right. It's really fascinating to me, because now I think if you're going to operate a successful business, even now, really in the not too distant future, um, your business like fundamentals have to be super strong. And like to Mike's point, it's like, hey, a client will come to us and be like, so how can we do AI? Well, I have to be honest, like, you're not ready to do AI right yet because of X, Y, and Z. So before this whole movement, you could get away with that. But now I think it's going to be much, much harder. And that's where certain businesses are going to have an upper hand, and some are going to unfortunately fall off. So I find that quite obvious, and pretty fascinating as we peel back the layers of the onion here. All right. So one thing we like to discuss also on these episodes is, tell us about some advice you would give to someone that is building within the AI space right now. I think you're a bit unique, because usually that question is targeted at someone that's building like a tech product, but I think that you'll probably have a pretty unique answer to this one. So I'm really interested to see how you answer it.
Yeah, I'll give that a shot. Let's see. So the first thing I would say is, to the tech people that are building tech products, first understand that people don't even really know what AI means. Right? It means a lot of things. It means it's a chatbot. It means some sophisticated machine learning thing that's doing, image recognition or protein folding. Like, chatbot and protein folding scientist stuff, those are very, very different things. So as rapidly as you can, get away from using the word AI and start talking about chat assistants, or email and meeting summarization tools, or automated pipelines that route your HubSpot stuff from HubSpot over to your Jira tickets for your engineering team, right? Like, get more specific, because if you're talking about AI, some of your customers think chatbot, and some of your customers think sophisticated machine learning thing, and that's going to create confusion, and that creates disappointment. So get more specific. That's my advice to the computer people. On the other end of the spectrum, to the user population, the people that will be the consumers of these products that many of your listeners are building, to them, I suggest building some kind of a learning ritual. The world is changing really fast. As I mentioned a little bit ago, about every 5 years, something really big happens to our teams and the way we work. And if you don't have a way of learning a little bit over time, this humongous change is going to get pushed on you, and it's going to feel overwhelming. And so when I first started trying to learn the PC, when I went into work at 9 o'clock in the morning, the first thing I did while I was sipping a little bit of coffee is I opened up a new piece of software that I never used before, or software that I used, but I clicked on a new feature that I'd never clicked on before. So I opened up CorelDRAW, which is like Photoshop except old. And I clicked on some icon that looked like a little apple. It was an Apple icon. What does that do? That's weird. I don't know. So I clicked it, and then I explored. By the end of the year, I knew like 300 new things about CorelDRAW that I didn't know before. And you need a learning ritual. So try something new every day, a new prompt, a new piece of software, try a new meeting summary tool, something. just learn a little bit over time.
That's why we're called stackability. That's what it is. It's skill stacking, and you can't learn it all at once. So you have to be able to constantly add another layer, add little things. And it's, just like the fable of the pebble in the water, the crow, you'll get there eventually. But the journey is never over. As you've seen since '92, all the changes that you've been going through, and for us, at the leading edge, where we're actually looking at technology every day and trying to stay abreast of it, we're incrementally learning constantly. But for people who are just starting, you got to start small. It's like going to the gym for the first time in a while. You can't just hit the leg day hard, because you won't be able to walk for a couple afterwards.
Yeah. In addition, you also have a very smart co-pilot that you can lean on called ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI you like to use. I found that I have easily baked that into my daily learning routine. Like at any given time, it's almost distracting in a way. I'll be asking ChatGPT something, going pretty deep on something I want to either build or learn about. You know, I might have an audio book going, as well throughout the day. So I think that's a really good piece of advice, regardless if you're building anything or not. I think that one thing that's going to happen is AI is probably going to make us pretty lazy in a lot of ways. So a good way, I'm a big fan of just staying sharp and trying to have an upper hand on as many things as possible. And one way to do that is just to continue, like, constantly be learning and be curious. So luckily we have a lot of really good tools that are emerging. So yeah, fantastic. Okay, so let's go back to your venture here, Dan. So are you looking to just kind of do this yourself? Like, where would you like to grow this in the future? Where do you think Reinvention Labs is going in the next, like, 5 years or so?
So I think as it's building right now, I'm still using like fragment resources. So I have some people that plug in here and there from a marketing and asset creation side and from a research side. I think the first place that it's likely to expand is after I give a 1 hour talk at some some conference. The first thing that instantly happens is, hey, that one thing that you said, we want to learn more about that. Is there like a 3-day workshop version of this? And so rapidly I will need to create a, workshop version of my content, something that helps people through the innovation process with AI and other innovation that comes after generative. And so I'm starting to build out the content for that workshop, and by summer or so I should be starting to deliver that so that we can give people an expanded version of the original content. When I do that, it won't scale if I'm trying to lead a workshop all by myself. So I'll build a workshop team, and then I'll augment my research team after that. Start bringing people in full time instead of using fragmented, or I'll just have an AI research partner. Right? We'll see how that goes. But that's I think where I'll go next.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see where the autonomous nature of AI goes. You know, so I'm in software, and I would love, and I didn't feel like, I'll be honest, like, I did not feel this way. I felt quite opposite to what I'm about to tell you 6 to 8 months ago. I was all about humans doing as much as possible, and I am still pro human, don't get me wrong. However, it would be undeniable um, to say that I wouldn't, like, anybody would be so highly benefited by a an autonomous team that you can give instructions to and they can just go ahead and do it. So I've been really, following a lot of the agency swarms and different types of autonomous GTPs that of GPTs that people are spinning up, and a lot of them are, like, most of them are open source. So you can you can very easily, if you have time and the knowledge and the skills, spin these up and go to town. And it's amazing. I think that whole piece of the puzzle is probably going to start to unfold here in the next like year or so.
Yeah, it already is, right? Like you can already see that happening very, very, very rapidly.
Was thinking when you were talking about the process there, and in my brain it immediately went to like, oh, you need to write a book, right? And you need to have all this information in one place.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm almost done with it. The book is called The Innovation Machine, and it talks about the process that I've created from adopting PCs when I first started, through the internet, through AI now, and robotics will be the one after that, right? By 2030, there'll be robots walking around our house and delivering our mail, and that will change things again. So the innovation machine is that. But to your loose leaf point, it is important when you're writing a book, especially as a technologist, that you're extracting out the parts that will stay true over time, right? Like it will be true that embracing a new technology as a person trying to do work will include learning new things and trying experiments, and not wasting your whole time sitting in meetings, but instead working on problem solving and higher level tasks. And those things will be true over time, even 25 years from now. So I tried to pull those things into the book, and then I'll link to my website for the stuff that sort of changes quarter to quarter.
Yeah, it's easier and easier to produce a book these days, which I think is pretty cool. Um, Mike's a big fan of books. He wants to write a book, so it's something we talk about a lot. I'm not sure if I would ever do it. I don't know if it's my cup of tea, but I give it to you guys. Um, let's talk about robots a little bit. So robotics is fascinating. Robots aren't a new thing. We've had companies like Boston Dynamics building robots for decades, right? Not sure who actually buys them, but I mean, there must be people that purchase these things. How do you think the whole robotics movement unfolds, right? And who do you think is first to market? We have from what I can tell, there's already some rather capable robots being produced. But what's interesting is we have like two parallels that I think are going to come together, one being robotics and then one being AI, which is like the brain. So now it's going to be a matter of time between the two just merge, and then we have like superhuman robots, walking around. So how do you think society will play out to that whole thing? I have a hard time really wrapping my brain around it. I almost think there has to be like an iPhone moment for it to happen, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
So I do believe there needs to be, I wouldn't say an iPhone moment, but what there has to be is an app store moment. Because the Boston Dynamics robots are amazing. They're probably the most capable that are out there, but they're still really hard to program. They're still really proprietary. There's no like shared standard between all the robotic things out there. It's just really difficult to make them do things. And so the Boston Robotics and other robots right now are pretty good if you're driving them, if you give them a very repeatable task. You'll often see the Boston Robotics Spot dog driving around with somebody with a joystick controller around him. And it is doing a lot of work on its own. But what's happening is the joystick is giving the robot a place to go, right? It's saying like, go to the top of those stairs. And then the robot figures out how to get up there. And if there's something in its way, it figures out how to navigate that autonomously. But it can't decide to go up the stairs, and it doesn't know what to do when it gets there. And so the programming task is the problem. It's too laborious to program these robots, and that's holding things back. But as you've noticed, AI is starting to be able to program things. And so if AI can start kicking out robot tasks. People could make GPT like robot tasks where like one developer somewhere makes a robot that can cook a stir fry for dinner. Some other developer somewhere uses AI to make a robot that can fold a t-shirt. And those things become things that are monetized in a marketplace. That's what I think will actually happen in the near term. We will later, maybe 2035, the 5 years after 2030, then we'll get robots that like just understand concepts and can figure out how to do them. But I think before we get there, I think we have an app store for tasks. And I think that will be huge, and it will create a huge economy for developers, and AI will make that way easier than it would have been if you started from scratch right now.
Yeah, I think I like what you said about that. That's really interesting. I go from when I'm looking at those robots, especially the Boston Dynamics ones, when the first time I saw one of them, go from that dog position to standing, and then I was like Terminator flashback. I just immediately was scared. It's like, this is cool, but I'm also scared. And then, then in my mind, I'm like, okay, now we're adding, the possible ability to think and to be a chat bot, or even even if it just could do the things that chat GPT can do. If I just said, oh, hey, go over there and grab me a beer, and it could walk in the fridge and grab me a beer and come back, like I would still be thinking it was going to kill me, like, so, but that's, that's 80s movies, that's too much of that stuff, but there is that fear, I mean, because you always hear about AIs created in this black box and we don't really know what it's going to do. And I don't know if that's just the owners of the companies, hedging their bets and trying to avoid liability, but when you have this machine, there has to be some safeties and safety mechanisms or something built in. So I don't know what, if you have any thoughts on that, Austin, or
It's there's a lot to unpack right there. I love the idea about the app store for general tasks. It's like, hey, I maybe I have a robot that does X, Y, and Z, and I only need task X, Y, and Z, right? So it kind of makes a lot of sense. I can, I don't need it to be maybe super general purpose. And maybe if I do, I can just buy that whole expansion pack and like, load it into my robot. Cool. Um, I I'm thinking that that probably makes a lot of sense. I'm also thinking that the way you get robots, the way that you get humanity and people to allow a robot into their house, I think you need to essentially enable it to do as many chores as possible and have like utility. So I think that as soon as we have like a made like dot AI like robot that is like $500, I think it's game on, right? But how do you get to that point, and how long does that take? I don't know what a typical robot goes for these days, but I mean, I'm assuming like it's prohibitively expensive, obviously. But there is a lot that has to happen in like manufacturing, um, to get it to the point where it's even remotely like doable for even a small percentage of the population. So, you know, um, it'll be interesting to see how we can get there, though, for sure.
Nvidia said it was going to be like $10,000 to $20,000 for it. So I mean, these are, then I immediately start thinking of, okay, well, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody who's going to pay 20 grand to have the Iron Man maid go around the house and do their thing, but
Yeah, I mean, but it's not too far off, because if you look at how much it costs for like a cleaning lady to clean your house for a year, and then you multiply that by a few years, then there's your cost right there, and you never have to pay for a cleaning lady again. So like,
We all have cars, and those only do one task, and they cost 2 or 3 times as much, right? I do think a couple of things I'll comment on in there. The first thing I think is we will see that monetization come from like the workforce first. So like my brother works at a company that does pool construction, right? At any one time there's 100 pools. And he, as the construction supervisor, has to go from job site to job site and just check it out. Like, did the rain cause the hole to cave in? Did the bricks get delivered on time? Like, and robot, like that 20,000 or 30,000 or 50,000 is an easy justification for a guy like him, right? Because it's dramatically reducing his travel time and workload time and all of that stuff. And then the thing could just take pictures of the site and upload it to the cloud. So that's the first thing I'll say. So I think we get there gradually, and then as they build more of them, the price comes down even more. And the Roomba is already like $400, and that does one thing. I think we get to a place where that makes sense economically. The second thing is what Mike was saying about how we're still sort of afraid, and there has to be some safety net. And I think the way that manifests itself is the first thing is robots really, AI driven things can't really do problem solving because most of them are either pre-programmed or pre-trained, to look for repeated scenarios, and they learn those things and figure out what to do. And so a problem can be different every time. If the problem is not new, if it happens all the time, then it's not actually a problem, it's a process that has to be followed. And so people are really good at problem solving, and so we will interject when problems happen. And so what happens when there are a bunch of robots is, guys like us or people will be in a control center somewhere, and we'll each have 25 robots that we're monitoring all the time. Just like a DevOps person sitting in a DevOps room monitoring the 25 servers for the website, right? And Splunk will send an alarm that says this robot's doing something weird, and the person will jump in and take remote control. Like these are solved problems already. It's already what we do with our servers. And so I think the DevOps monitoring thing is how we overcome the fear of AI controlled things.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's some automatic built-in guardrails that you can just use to plug it right into a different set of hardware and software. I mean, in some cases, not even really that different. And, hit the kill switch if you need to. And there's a little bit of safety. So I think that might make people at least a little bit more comfortable around the whole thing. So yeah, I like it. I can see that coming to fruition. Awesome. So outside of robots, what do you think's next? Maybe 5 years out here. What are we looking at in terms of the AI landscape?
I think we, at the beginning of the conversation, we talked a little bit about information consumption, where you will be able to use AI tools to summarize a bunch of meetings for you, so you don't have to sit in meeting after meeting after meeting. It'll also do the same thing to your inbox and to your chat messages. It'll just give you an information conversation dashboard that you look at and see what needs your attention and what doesn't. That I think is already starting to happen with tools like Read AI or Otter AI or whatever you're using. But all of that is incoming information. And so what I think will start happening is we have Otter and or Read or whatever, and we can look at information summaries. And then meanwhile, we're over here and we're talking to our personal chat assistant, and we're asking it questions, and we're trying to figure out what we're trying to do next and asking it strategy. And it's rewriting our messages for us so they're more clear. And our personal chat assistant starts to understand our perspectives a lot more clearly. At some point, that personal assistant can share stuff into the information summary stream. Even though you didn't go to a meeting and didn't talk for 45 minutes, your personal assistant knows you have a perspective on that topic. And these other people are talking about that thing, and it knows you should be in that conversation, but you're not there. And I think we'll start to see that two-way exchange of information summary, where your AI's job is just to understand you and your perspective on topics. And then it interjects that stuff where it needs to get interjected so that you don't have to be in every single meeting on every single topic.
Yeah. I mean, imagine the amount of time one could save. You see, humanity could save on get some more effective communication and cut down on meetings, even if like, you're not in like a hardcore enterprise environment. Like people still meet, and a lot of the times it can just be way more efficient. So I think that would be welcome.
To your point, Dan, earlier, not only are you having the meeting, but then you're having the chat and you're having the email, and they, it's like it's so repetitive and redundant in so many ways. I always think when even with people now with Google, you could turn on your auto responder basically, and you could almost pretty much have your emails respond with AI. I'm not personally comfortable with that yet. I'm sure if it was trained on my thinking and the way that I communicate, I might be at some point. But then I don't know. Do you think that'll be an obstacle to this?
For sure. And it's the same obstacle that we had with robots, right? There has to be a problem solving layer where you can interject and say, I disagree. That's not the right way to tackle that thread. And that'll be tricky, and it will interrupt the real time flow that could have been there if we didn't need that. But it's already not real time because we're already waiting for people to wake up and show up at work on Monday or have a meeting on Thursday. And so, it will start to give you when you first get to work in the morning, your AI summary will tell you your AI assistant will tell you, this is how I'm planning on responding to these 5 urgent things. Does that look okay? And you'll hit the green check mark and it'll just happen. And so you'll have the control to be able to say, no, thumbs down, that's the wrong way to do that. We need that thumbs up, thumbs down control because it won't be 100% accurate because it doesn't know the things in your head. That data isn't in any databases. So we'll always need that problem solving layer.
Because I think that was in the they were talking about that at HubSpot, and they were using it for for the chatting. They were having because they had just rolled it out, they were having it go through, and for the tech support or whatever, however it answered things, you could go in and correct the answer, so that okay, so going forward, that answer would be better handled this way, that kind of thing. So that's kind of exactly what you're talking about. That's really interesting.
I mean, it's personalization on steroids, really. It's we already have personalization ingrained into a lot of things, but it just takes the whole personalization level to like a whole nother realm, right? And I think that that's one of the things you're going to probably see start to unplay pretty quickly here in the next year or so. People are just going to be harvesting more and more data, and as soon as it's easier for people to just start training their own models affordably and efficiently, I think that's going to be it's going to be a launch pad for all of that sort of thing. So I think that makes sense.
Interesting, because I remember, if you've seen The Social Dilemma or any of those movies, when they were talking about the Cambridge Analytica thing, that now we're going back 8 years. And that's when we found out about it. So we're not really even talking, it's 10 years or at least, but they were saying things like, if they had 30 answers, to questions that you asked, and it was these obscure ones about whether or not you liked purple or you ate pizza on Tuesdays or whatever these, once they had 30 bits of data, they knew you better than, or could predict your behavior better than you could yourself. And it was rapid. It was like 7 questions. They know you better than most people. If by the time they got to 35 or 50 questions, it knew you what you were thinking without predicting it. And that's where the guy said, well, we're not really listening to your phones because we don't have to, because we have all this information. We pretty much know what you're going to do. So, I mean, I guess it's partially our own ego thinking we're so special and, we have these amazing thoughts, but they were doing that, 10 years ago. What can they do now, right? I'm sure they definitely know me better than I know myself, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, this upcoming election cycle is going to be very interesting, and I'm actually surprised. I mean, I haven't really paid attention to the news much lately in the last few months because I like to just keep my mind pretty clean. But yeah, it's going to get interesting. So, all right, well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. We touched on a lot of things. We touched on robots, the future of AI, intense personalization. The whole spectrum. Dan Chuparkoff, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And feel free to reach out to Dan. I will link his website, contact information.
Connect with me on my website, danchuparkoff.com, or on LinkedIn, LinkedIn/in/Chuparkoff. Those are the two best ways. I'd love to have conversations with any of you that want to. I love talking about this stuff. Your audience here is my conduit to continuous learning myself. So I want to have as many conversations as I can. Austin and Mike, thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to talking again in the future.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Stackability AI. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel as we publish new content all the time. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.